Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
Hello and welcome everyone to a brand new episode of the Vantage Influencers Podcast. In today's episode, we'll be diving deep into a topic that's often misunderstood: the fundamental differences between recruitment and talent acquisition. I'm your host, Susmita, and joining me is our esteemed guest today, Javeed Ashraf Khan. Javeed is the Talent Acquisition and Global Mobility Director at KPMG Saudi Levant Cluster. Welcome, Javeed. It's great to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you, Susmita. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, actually.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. And I think it's the time for recruiting and talent acquisition is so much more better these days. So we are enjoying ourselves.
Yeah. But before we delve into our discussion on recruitment versus talent acquisition, could you share a bit about your professional journey and experiences in this field, Javeed?
Absolutely. More than happy to. It's about 20 plus years, but I'm going to shorten it and not bore you with too much of details. But I think from my growing days, I always wanted to do something which was so people-centric. And everybody says that it's become cliche, but then I've always stuck to doing this. And, when I first started work, I worked for United Nations. That's my first job right after college. And then I went to work for a call center, which was called America Online. These two were not HR or these two were not talent acquisition.
Yeah.
And then I stumbled upon talent acquisition or recruiting in those days with IBM. That was very early of 2006. And I fell in love with this profession, the profession which basically helps people find a career or find a kind of a direction for their lives on how they want to go ahead, and also is a subset of bringing the other things like providing great means to your families, right? So I just loved this profession. So I worked for IBM for about close to 14 years. This is half of it is in India, based out of Bangalore, but always been traveling in IBM, most of the places in India, and then moved to Dubai in 2012, managing IBM's Middle East and Africa portfolio. And while I did IBM for this many years, I also been very lucky to also be a consultant with IBM, handling external clients and delivering HR projects and talent acquisition projects for them. And then again came back to internal HR with MasterCard. And then I've done, a startup, which was a bank in Saudi Arabia. That was a different experience of talent acquisition altogether, building up a brand new people team from me being the employee number 5 to about 200 employees in about 8-9 months. And then I went to work for KPMG. This happened in 2021, and I'm still with KPMG managing their talent acquisition, retention, engagement, and so on and so forth. And this is what I'm doing currently right now.
Yeah, that really sounds like a very enriching journey, Javeed.
Thank you.
And it's fascinating to see how you have evolved over the years. And speaking of evolution, could you share insights on how you have seen recruitment and talent acquisition evolve throughout your career?
Well, I mean, it's just not my career, right? I mean, if you look at it, talent acquisition or recruiting, let me start with recruiting. I'll come to talent acquisition because that's a much more newer relative term, which has started to coin and take prominence in the last couple of years. But if you look at recruiting, I think it's a very, very old profession. Let me ask you this. I mean, Egyptian civilization seems to be the most oldest civilizations or one of the oldest civilizations. Now, when they were building the pyramids, they were still recruiting people for doing that, right? Imagine the JD. Find me a man who is about 12 years old so that he can come and work on the pyramids. Or find me a woman who has strong attributes to do this kind of job. So if you look at recruiting is a very, very age-old profession, which we have been doing. Of course, we don't hire that way like the pyramids or the supervisors who build the pyramids hired, but it's come a long way in terms of how the evolution has. It's taken a dramatic change on the evolution. Now, what's recruiting? Recruiting is something that is very transactional in nature, right? You are going after a job or a seat that you need to fill as soon as possible. And that's how it basically works. Now, if you look at the recruiting pre-internet, it was through newspapers, manual resumes, and so on and so forth. Now, with the advent of internet, the landscape basically changed to online jobs, to the tracking systems, to the ATS systems that we have, the new recruitment processes. It got more efficient while things happened. Now, the real shift came when the organizations actually started to understand that we don't need recruiting, because recruiting is very reactive, very superficial. We just are filling a job and we're forgetting about the process on how we're doing it. And that's when actually talent acquisition started to take more prominence, which is more strategic in nature, right? And it's all about building relationship. It's all about not just a candidate that you need now, but can you use this candidate maybe a year down or a 2 year down later? And it's about nurturing a pipeline of candidates. So now this needs to get aligned not just to your current need in your organization, but also the future goals of the organization. Now, slowly and steadily, we are seeing an HR profession like talent acquisition also is getting affected by AI, by data analytics, and you have various, these external tools that are coming to help us.
Yeah.
It's just making it more targeted, more precise in talent acquisition, which is a difference between recruiting. And I always feel this is a key factor is the candidate experience. Now, what does a candidate always have a big issue with the recruiter is I don't get response, or I don't get feedback, or I don't know what is happening to my process, and so on and so forth. In talent acquisition, the candidate has more power and is absolutely aware of a beautiful process that's going to happen in the journey of they getting selected or recruited for the organization. That's are some of the key differences between recruiting and talent acquisition. From the time we built pyramids till today, I think recruiting has definitely been a part of everybody's life. And everybody, for me, not just the hiring manager and the recruiter, but the entire organization is a recruiter in itself. And hence that employer branding plays such a creative role, because once you understand what you are as a brand and what your future is, then everybody is a potential resume seeker or a recruiter who then feeds into bringing good talent into the organization. It's just not the recruiter's kind of KPI. It is the organization's KPI to nurture great talent and build great talent for the organization. So that's in a nutshell. If you want to deep dive into any of these, I would be more than happy to. But in a nutshell, I've given you the evolution. I'm like from the newspapers, from the pyramids, and now you're looking at great ATSs like PeopleStrong, Oracle, SAP, Success Factors. How many of those have come in? And every day there's a new tool that comes out saying, oh, we have a great AI or we have a great algorithm to shortlist better resumes. But you got to understand, it's just not about finding talent. It's about nurturing the talent through the talent acquisition process. And not just that, your job does not end at the day the candidate joins. It is an ongoing process and how you work on this. And that's the major evolution that we are seeing these days.
So there has been a significant transformation
100%, yeah.
in this, right? And organization, the best thing about it is organizations are understanding the difference between recruitment and talent acquisition, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
So, and they do, right? I mean, and they understand, no, if I need to do a senior hiring, I need to be better. So I have a different team, which is called the executive recruiting team. Then if I need to do a lower job, then there's a different team. Then if I want to do campus hiring, then there's a different team. So organizations are definitely understanding the value, but they need to be able to bring a balance between the two.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was to ask it. Like, is there value in maintaining a balance between recruitment and talent acquisition efforts?
100%, Susmita. You definitely need to have that balance. Now, you don't need all jobs to be proactive and strategic. There are going to be those jobs that you need to be just a recruiter and a recruiting professional to get the job done, get the person hired quickly, manage the average hiring time, and so on and so forth. But there are also going to be strategic aspects and very proactive, wherein you're looking at a very high potential person in your organization. He or she might not have given you the resignation, or they might have not officially resigned, but you get that sense that this person is a very high potential performer, may not be in our organization for a long, because high performers are always headhunted and taken by the competition. And then you as a recruiter then think, I think I should start building a pipeline. That's how the organization needs to start to balance it, right? The balance between an immediate need and what my future is going to look like. Now, 90% of the times, and this is something that I've always spoken to recruiters, is how much time do you spend with your hiring managers? And recruiter says, when we do the job briefing, we spend time. And I'm like, no, you got to spend time with your hiring managers and your leadership, wherein you understand what they're doing for their business. How are they making money? What are the goals that they are working towards? Or what are their KPIs? Now, two things will happen. One, you'll become a better recruiter to talk to a candidate. You'll be able to give candidates so much more better information about your organization. Second, you will also become a subject matter expertise in the business that you're recruiting for, wherein you will be able to now say, these guys are winning these projects, and I want to be able to go ahead and build a pipeline. I want to be able to find this kind of talent. Where can I find this talent? What is happening in the competition? How can I break this? And so on and so forth. This kind of thinking is very much needed. Now, when you say we need a balance, the balance needs to come from both sides. One is the hunger from the recruiting team or the talent acquisition team, who wants to spend this time, who wants to learn this, and who wants to better the skills. The second is the organization itself should look at talent acquisition as a more strategic team rather than just a transactional team. Now,
Yeah.
one is not given and the other one is not free. But if you look at it, you got to work hard to build that relationship, build that kind of trust with your organization, with your hiring managers. So it is as important for the recruiters to balance this, and it is as very important for the organization and its leadership to balance this. Only then this marriage is going to be successful. Otherwise, it's always going to be you did it, I did not do it, you did not listen to me, I did not listen to me. This is not very healthy for a talent acquisition team.
Yeah, that's quite a pragmatic approach that you have said just now, Javid. And slightly moving towards a different angle of this discussion,
Sure.
imposter syndrome. How do you think this affects recruitment and talent acquisition practices, both for candidates and hiring managers?
That's a very good question, right? I mean, and I think every one of us has this imposter syndrome in us. Now, let's break it down into candidates and hiring managers. These are the two parties which basically make the marriage happen, and then they come together to work for an organization, right? So, if you look at candidates, and if candidates have this imposter syndrome, Shushmita, then they won't apply for certain jobs where they might be so amazingly fit. They might say, oh, maybe I don't have this, or maybe I don't have the skill, or maybe I'm not in that industry, or and so on and so forth, right? So this imposter syndrome, one, it's only it only happens to those high performing individuals or high performing achievers, right?
Yeah.
It does not happen to everybody. Now, an average person might not have an imposter syndrome, and an average candidate or an average applicant might not have an imposter syndrome. This happens only with high performing achievers and high performing people.
Yeah.
There are quite two, three things that might happen. One, I don't think I'm qualified enough to apply for this job. Two, let them get in touch with me. Why should I get in touch? Maybe I'm not good enough. If they think I'm good enough, they'll get in touch with me. Three,
They'll contact.
um,
Yeah.
is maybe I'll wait for the next one. Now, when this happens, you are missing out on a lot of great opportunities which might have been right for you. Maybe the next one is right, maybe it's not. This is a risk that you'll have to take. But at least if you're applying and if you're having conversation with the recruiters, having the first interviews, then your confidence and this imposter syndrome is basically going away. It might not disappear, but it'll start to fade out, that you might be great, you might be doing right, and it's just your thinking, or it's just you holding yourself back, which is causing all the trouble. Now, this is what happens, when I see an imposter syndrome in a candidate, and I always tell them, what's the worst that can happen? They're going to say, no, it's okay. We'll have a better opportunity. I mean, that's the worst that can happen, right? Nobody's going to put a gun at your head and shoot you down or something. Now, let's look at it from a hiring manager. An imposter syndrome on a hiring manager. Now, this can manifest over caution, meaning, oh, I don't know if this candidate is good enough. Oh, I don't know if I am good enough to manage this candidate. Should I look at another candidate? Should I look at somebody else who is like me? Or then, these kind of imposter syndromes then can manifest too much of caution. What will caution happen in recruiting? One, you might have a great candidate sitting right in front of you, but you might say, no, I don't think I can manage him, or manage him or her, and then you lose a great candidate. Second is you increase your average time of hiring because you're just not able to make a decision, right?
Yeah.
The fear kicks in, and there are so many missed opportunities that happen. You miss out on a diverse pool because you're thinking, if I hire somebody who thinks like me, talks like me, is from my college, I can manage them better because I understand those. Then you might have a great candidate who does not belong to those kind of ecosystem. And then you don't build a great diverse team. You build a team which is something like you. Then you struggle on how do I get new ideas, right? Now, this is what happens with hiring managers' imposter syndrome. Now, if you want to mitigate, and if you can mitigate this, you're going to create a beautiful, inclusive culture. There are training programs available in the market, and there's a lot of research done on this particular imposter syndrome in recruiting, and that can help organizations change the way they approach the whole aspect of it. But it's open communication and a positive reinforcement. Again, talent acquisition plays a big role. I'll give you an example. Some time back, I had a lot of CV rejection from a hiring manager. Then I soon realized that it is not the CVs, or it's not the quality of the CVs, but it's an imposter syndrome of a hiring manager, which is causing the issues.
Yeah.
Then what I did is I went to the hiring manager and I said, you know what? Don't worry about this. I just don't want you to shortlist any resumes. Trust us. We will send you on a blind date with a candidate, not with anybody else. We'll send you on a blind date.
Okay.
Go on to this blind date. Just meet the person. I'm not going to give you the name, resume, blah, blah, blah. But it's a potential candidate for the job that you have. Go meet him and her, and you come back and tell me how it felt, right?
Mhm.
And he came back and told me that's the candidate I want. So you got to get proactive. You got to get creative. You really need to, can't keep living with a hiring manager syndrome. This is what you can fix. You can't fix a candidate imposter syndrome as a recruiter or as a talent acquisition leader, because you don't control, because unless somebody applies and says, I want to be a part of your organization, you can't basically go. But there are ways of approaching a few of those and says, listen, I think I looked at your profile and you're really good at it, and these are the things that I think you might be able to add value. So why don't you come and apply with us? So you can do a lot. So there is examples that I can give you more, but I think that's how the imposter syndrome is basically making an effect on our lives these days.
Yeah. And in case of the HR who have this syndrome, I think it's mostly very much unconscious, isn't it?
Correct. See, first of all, you're very correct, right? First of all, I think we need to tell ourselves this, that HR is not a support organization. It's not a cost center. These are the terms that the firms use, right? These are the terms that the organizations use about HR. Oh, they're a support organization. They'll do what we need to tell them. No, I think that's the first thing that you need to tell yourself, that you are the team that is building the future, the culture, and the talent of an organization. How can you just be a support organization? So you need to be feeling that empowerment. You need to feel enabled to make those kind of decisions happen. Now, this is not easy. I mean, it's a cultural aspect that's been going on from years to years to years to years. When an escalation comes from an hiring manager, we as HR will all start panicking. I think that needs to change as well. One, it's just a question. It's not an escalation of why and how the people are doing what they're doing. So I don't think we should treat it as an escalation. But I think you're very right, Susmita. Until unless we take this out of our head that we are a support or a cost center, we don't generate revenue for the organization, that is not going to change. Until unless, imagine if you don't get the people that the organization needs, if you don't manage them really, if you don't engage with them, if you don't retain them, if you don't pay them, how is the organization going to work? So which is the most important team in the organization? Human resources.
Yeah. But both ways, imposter syndrome is a very significant barrier to success if left unaddressed.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm. So let's shift our focus to employer branding. You have touched a bit about it in one of your previous answers, but how do you think employer branding influences recruitment and talent acquisition differently? And what can organizations do about it to leverage it effectively?
Loaded question, but very important question. Very important in this day and age. Now, take an example of the organizations which have gone out of existence in India. My dad used to, I'm only going to get my examples because I don't want to be hurting anybody's sentiment and feelings through this podcast. My dad used to work for HMT watches. Have you ever heard about them?
Yeah.
Right? Right. So the HMT watches did not put a lot of effort on employer branding or the branding of its own. They thought it'll sell by itself, but it did not. Titan came and Titan took them away and they went out of business completely. So there are organizations as large as that which have gone out of existence because they could not manage their employee branding. Now, of course, there could be a lot many other reasons why they went out, but when I look at it from my own lens, and that could be one of the reasons, innovate in an employer branding. But I think even in today's day and age, what do you do first? Even if you're buying a simple product, you go online and you research about that product. A very simple, even if it is a couple of thousand rupees or dirhams, right? Um, Today, when somebody is wanting to make a career change, they go online. They look at Glassdoor, they look at Fishbowl, they look at normal social media handles like Insta, LinkedIn, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. They do a lot of research before joining an organization. Now, even today, when anybody writes to me saying, Javed, we might be interested in you. Would you like to change your career? I first they ask is, tell me the brand you're recruiting for, and I would like to do my research before I say yes or no. That's how I approach even my career changes, right?
Mm.
Now, simply, that is very important because if you don't consistently communicate about your values and cultures through social media, through career pages, and very importantly, genuine employee testimonials, not scripted, genuine employee testimonials.
Mm.
If you don't communicate this consistently, how will the world know what kind of a culture and values you have? Yeah, right?
Mm.
Now, if you don't engage your candidate through various approaches of not just having him or her go through the process, but also to keep that pipeline intact for future, how will they know that I need to be a part of this organization? Because look, the recruiter takes care of these things so amazingly well. And the first phase to anybody of the company is the recruiter. And then the experience itself, right? That's so much more important, right? It's about building a long-term reputation, Shushmita. It
Yeah.
attracts and retains top talent. Employer branding influences so many areas, but for me, the key areas, because we're talking recruiting and talent acquisition today, and I come from that background, and the passion that you see in me for recruiting is I think 200 above everything else. Because for me, employer branding, if you don't have a, a way to communicate and way to invest, how are we developing? How are we recognizing people? If you don't tell this to the outside world is not going to come and join you. It's not going to wanting to invest their career. And nowadays, it's not like old days where people spent 15 years in an organization,
Mm.
25 years in an organization. That's changing. Today's millennial workforce or the new workforce that's coming into the organizations work for, am I having a great time in the job that I'm doing? Not whether they're paying well, not whether I'm working on something amazing. Yes, all of those contribute, but the first filter is, am I enjoying my day? Because most of my time is spent in the office or with my colleagues. Am I enjoying the culture? Am I enjoying the values of the organization? Am I contributing to something? And hence, employer branding becomes so much more important on
Mm.
communication fronts and also telling a true story and not a scripted story.
And a constant lookout for a change in today's employees.
Very true. Very, very true. I mean, I think an average time spent, when you go to LinkedIn, and LinkedIn provides you great insights. I was looking at an organization some day back and I went to their insights and I looked at an average tenure of an employee in that company is just 1 year. What does it say? It says either you have a bad culture and that's why everybody's leaving you after a year, or either you have something wrong which you need to fix and take care of it, or it says the employee is bored working for you because he or she does not feel engaged.
Yeah.
That is how organization needs to look at what is the average time an employee spending with you to help you understand where your brand is. Is your brand emotionally connecting with your employees? Is your brand emotionally connected with the community and the larger country that you're working for? Are the goals aligned to where the country or the whole process is going? Like, are you ESG enabled? Are you so and so, right? So there's a lot that needs to happen there. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant advice, Javed. And finally, let's talk about the future outlook. So, what is your vision for the future of recruitment and talent acquisition, and how can organizations prepare for it?
There's so much more to do on this, right? I mean, I think we haven't got to fixing this whole algorithm, whether this is the right or this is the wrong thing to do. And I think the first thing is, when you look at the future or how the recruitment and talent acquisition needs to work on is, I would say first, every talent acquisition leader, every person who involves in a strategic output should go look at their current target operating model, which is, do I have a model which is I have sources differently, schedulers differently, offers differently, or do I have a model which is 360 in nature, wherein one recruiter is spending end-to-end time with the whole hiring manager from the from the hire to onboarding journey, right? So one is look at your target operating model. There are various operating models that you can imply. Now, you don't need to have one size fits all. You can have various target operating models in your one single organization, which should be able to go back and say, I think this is the best way to do recruiting. This is the best way to do talent acquisition. I need the both, and here is how I'm going to operate. So the first onus lies on the talent acquisition leaders. Second one is embrace technology. It's not going to take away your jobs. I think recruiters' jobs are the most safest part of it.
Okay.
The recruiters will use AI to shortlist resumes, but recruiters are not going to go away. I'll tell you an example. Largest aviation company here in the Middle East, okay, largest one, the biggest one, the most branded, nice one. They use AI for shortlisting candidate, but they also have an aspect wherein yes, no, and a maybe, meaning the recruiters will definitely have to look at the maybe. So the jobs are not going away. I don't think AI is going to replace any one of us anytime soon, unless we have a human Android sitting and shortlisting candidates or calling candidates and saying, do you want to work for our company? It's not going to happen, but we need to embrace the change of technology. We need to utilize the machine learning concepts. We need to utilize the AI concepts. We need to, and this could be for sourcing, screening, and engagement, right? For all the others, you still need the human touch to give to the recruitment. The other things is your employer branding, enhance it. Continuously work on building a very authentic employer brand that resonates with the candidates, community, hiring managers, everybody who makes an ecosystem, right? And this is, again, I use it very authentically. And I have to say that don't do it scripted, be very authentic so that people can actually then connect with the human rather than just a script behind the employer branding. Invest in employee development. So it's not just one way, right? It's just not one road coming into your company. There has to be a place where your employees feels, I think I'm learning continuously. I think my career is growing. I think I want to stay here, which is going to reduce your biggest attrition problem, because what will happen is it's going to make your talent acquisition team not fill a problem of a leaking bucket. If you keep leaking from the down and you keep recruiting, there's never end to it. There'll never be, but all I'm trying to say is at least it'll reduce the leak that's going to happen and not like bleed out kind of a thing. And you need to be agile. There are so many changes that are happening in the market. There are so many emerging trends in the workforce that you need to be upbeat. For an example, in my team, I have a recruiter whose stretch assignment is, so we have a team meeting every Thursday, okay? Every Thursday, I get my entire team on a call, no matter where they are in the world. They are flexible to be wherever they are. And they all come on a one call, and there is a 15-minute session by this one recruiter who tells them what's happening in the market, what are the emerging trends, what are the other recruiting organizations doing, what are the agencies doing, what are the freelancing recruiters, whatever they can research and find on the internet, or use ChatGPT to get those things, and then they bring and share it with the fellow recruiters. So one of my recruiters' stretch assignment is that he or she gets 15 minutes and they present it to the entire team. So this way the entire team says, oh yeah, let's also do it. Let's also, you create an learning environment on those aspects, right? And yeah, so these are my things. Target operating model, technology, and employer branding, and of course, employee development and agile. Now, there's one cliche, I think everybody does it, so I'm not going to spend too much time. It's your diversity and inclusion. And I think that's now become a part of our DNA is to have an inclusive and a very diverse work culture. So these, I think, are the future for recruiting and talent acquisition. And I think this is how it's going to look like. So you need to be very, very approachable and very holistic on these aspects.
It has been an absolute pleasure delving into the world of recruitment and talent acquisition with you today, Javeed. I'm confident that our conversation will both be informative and valuable to the organizations and recruiters tuning into the podcast. So looking forward to another possibility of joining you again for another episode in the future. Take care and have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having me, Susmita. It's been great to share these perspectives, and happy to share anything else. I'm always so passionate about this profession that I can keep working, right? So, so happy recruiting and take care of yourself.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.